So the very last thing that I wanted to talk about here briefly is kind of like, what does all this mean? And so obviously what we've done is we've taken a mockup, which is a pretty straightforward looking mockup, and we've turned it into a pretty straightforward looking HTML page. There's not a whole lot of rocket science. It's pretty cool when you do it for the first time, but the greater question is, where does all this stuff come from? And so obviously when we're building web pages using web applications, when we're actually coding our own servers, that's where all this data really comes from. I mean, we're not going to go in and we're not going to hard code a bunch of lorem ipsum text or whatever the text might be in the actual text file of the page. So all of this stuff would actually get generated by the server. So there's some handy functions that we could use to pull data out of the database, because presumably this is all going to be stored in a database, and basically kind of plug in the data into where all these things are. And so basically anything that you see on this page which isn't which is going to change from one post to another is actually going to be populated by our server. And that's the kind of stuff that we're going to learn about later when we start using Ruby on Rails. And it's one of the cool things about how to make a web page really come alive. It becomes actually functional instead of just a set piece like we have here, which is very static. So nothing you need to worry too much about at the moment, but it's definitely a nice little look ahead. Then there's one other thing to take a look at. Well, actually, in the same vein, I would like to say that the things like the search field, or there would also be a create post, which this button would presumably go to. We haven't actually styled the button yet either. Things like that are how you actually interface with your backend, and so those would be interfaces for us to submit data to the backend. So it's kind of there's this circle of life that goes on where you give data to your backend using forms, or there are a couple other ways of doing it, but it's mostly forms, and then that data comes back and is displayed in the browser using text generated by your server-side code. And then the final thing that I want to talk about is this. We never ended up actually using the drop-down menu because this is really supposed to be something where when you click on it, it's actually going to open up and drop down and have some options available. And that right now is outside the scope of what we're looking at here, because that's actually done with JavaScript. And basically JavaScript is, as you should know by now, it's the language that lives in the browser instead of on the server side. And so it lets you I mean, it's incredibly powerful with what it can do, but at the very least, it allows you to start animating certain things on the page, like drop-down menus, and it definitely makes working with web pages a lot more fun and a lot more dynamic, and you see it used more and more these days. So that's another thing that we'll be covering later on as part of the intensive program. So anyways, I hope you guys really enjoyed this walkthrough. It's a lot of fun to code. I love coding. I love being able to talk about code. So please let me know in the comments or directly if there's anything that you liked out of it, or anything that we can make better. And otherwise, good luck with the remaining lessons, and I hope to see you building some cool stuff. So thanks a lot, and take care. Bye.